The site of Göbekli Tepe is a series of circular enclosures, but then in the center of each enclosure you have two particularly big T-shaped pillars of limestone, sort of facing each other.
The marks shouldn't exist. Not here. Not 11,600 years ago. And yet, they do. In 2025, a team of researchers in the Turkish desert aimed the most advanced laser scanners on Earth at ancient stones, and what appeared on their screens stopped them in their tracks. The grooves and tool marks were too precise, too consistent, too impossible. Machines, not human hands, seemed to have carved them. This is Göbekli Tepe, a site older than Stonehenge.
Göbekli Tepe, often called the ground zero of history, continues to reshape what we know about early civilization.
Older than the pyramids, where our assumptions about the dawn of civilization crumble beneath the weight of stone. How could hunter-gatherers, with no wheels, no metal, no written language, have built something this vast, this precise, this deliberate? And why bury it so carefully, hiding it from history itself? By the end of this video, you'll see why Göbekli Tepe is rewriting everything we thought we knew about human history, and why some scholars are struggling to accept what it's showing us. The impossible temple, Göbekli Tepe, sits on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey, about 10 miles from the ancient city of Şanlıurfa. For thousands of years, local farmers walked past this hill without giving it a second thought. It looked like a natural formation, just another mound in a landscape full of them. But in 1994, a Kurdish shepherd noticed something strange. A stone was sticking out of the ground, too flat and too smooth to be natural. He reported it to the local museum, and a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt came to investigate.
Şu anda Göbekli Tepe kazılarını yürüten kazı başkanı Profesör Klaus Schmidt'le birlikteyiz.
What Schmidt uncovered over the next 2 decades would turn the field of archaeology upside down. Beneath the surface of that ordinary-looking hill lay at least 20 massive circular enclosures, each one built around enormous T-shaped pillars carved from single blocks of limestone. The pillars stand up to 18 feet tall and weigh as much as 50 tons. To put that in perspective, 50 tons is roughly the weight of 3 fully loaded school buses stacked on top of each other. These are not rough-hewn boulders. They are precisely shaped monoliths with flat surfaces and clean edges. Many of them are covered in intricate carvings depicting animals. Lions with their ribs showing through their skin, foxes frozen in aggressive poses, scorpions, vultures, snakes, and creatures that seem to exist only in nightmares. The carvings are not simple scratches or outlines. They are executed in a technique called high relief, where the image projects outward from the stone surface. To create a high-relief carving, you have to remove all the stone around the figure, essentially sculpting in reverse. This requires immense skill and patience. One mistake, one slip of the tool, and weeks or months of work can be ruined. The artisans who created these carvings did so on one of the hardest types of limestone found anywhere on Earth. And according to conventional archaeology, they did it using nothing but other stones as tools. No metal chisels, no bronze, no iron. Just rock hitting rock, for years on end. But the carvings are not even the most puzzling aspect of the site. The real mystery is the construction itself. The limestone pillars were not found lying around on the hilltop. They were quarried from bedrock at the bottom of the slope and then transported uphill to their final positions. Modern engineers who have studied the logistics say that moving a 50-ton block of stone up a steep grade without wheels, cranes, or draft animals would be extraordinarily difficult even with today's technology. It would require hundreds of workers, sophisticated rigging systems, and careful planning to prevent the stone from rolling backward and crushing everyone in its path. The builders of Göbekli Tepe accomplished this feat dozens of times, with pillars that show no evidence of damage or mishap during transport. The official explanation for how this was achieved has always been organized labor. The theory goes that nomadic hunter-gatherer tribes from across the region gathered at this location for religious ceremonies. Motivated by faith, they somehow coordinated massive construction projects despite having no permanent settlements, no agricultural surplus to feed the workers, and no written records to plan the logistics. For decades, this explanation was accepted because there was no alternative. But the 2025 laser scanning data has blown that narrative apart. The machine signature. The research team that descended on Göbekli Tepe in early 2025 came equipped with technology that would have seemed like science fiction just a generation ago. Their primary tool was a three-dimensional laser scanner capable of mapping surface details with micron-level precision. 1 micron is 1,000th of a millimeter, smaller than a red blood cell, far smaller than the naked eye can perceive. By scanning the pillars at this resolution, the team could analyze every tool mark, every scratch, every subtle variation in the stone surface. They also employed artificial intelligence algorithms trained to recognize patterns in stoneworking techniques, comparing the marks at Göbekli Tepe to a database of known ancient and modern cutting methods. The first surprise came from the overall geometry of the site. When the AI analyzed the positions of the central pillars in the 3 oldest enclosures, it found that their center points formed a nearly perfect equilateral triangle. The sides of this triangle were equal to within a fraction of an inch over distances of more than 100 feet. To achieve this level of precision on uneven, rocky terrain without modern surveying equipment requires an understanding of geometry that we typically associate with the ancient Greeks, who lived more than 7,000 years after Göbekli Tepe was built. It requires methods for measuring long distances accurately, for compensating for elevation changes, and for transferring precise angles from a plan to the physical world. According to the conventional timeline, the builders of Göbekli Tepe should not have possessed any of this knowledge. They supposedly could not even write. But it was the tool marks themselves that truly shocked the researchers. For decades, the accepted theory was that the pillars were shaped through a process called pecking, where a harder stone is used to strike the softer limestone repeatedly, gradually wearing away the surface until the desired shape emerges. Pecking is slow, labor-intensive, and leaves distinctive marks, rough, irregular depressions that overlap randomly across the stone surface. This is what the team expected to find. It is not what they found. Along the edges of the pillars, the laser scans revealed linear cuts that were perfectly straight for distances of over 3 feet.
A laser scanner emits a rapidly pulsing or continuous laser beam.
The width of these cuts was approximately 0.1 inches, far too thin and too consistent to have been made by smashing one rock against another. When the AI compared these marks to its database of known techniques, it found no match among Stone Age methods. The cuts were too clean, too uniform, too precise. The computer kept flagging them as anomalous, returning results that suggested mechanical rather than manual execution. The spacing between the cuts was eerily consistent. The depth was uniform to within thousandths of an inch. The patterns looked less like the work of a tired human laboring under the desert sun, and more like the output of a machine following a programmed path. The researchers double-checked their equipment. They recalibrated the scanners. They ran the analysis multiple times with different parameters. The results did not change. Something had cut these stones with a level of precision that simply should not exist at this point in human history. There is no evidence of metal tools at Göbekli Tepe, no bronze, no iron, no copper. If metal had been used, there should be traces of rust or metallic residue embedded in the limestone. The stones are clean, whatever cut. Them left no chemical signature that matches any known material. The fire and ice secret. As the laser scanning progressed, the team made another discovery that added a new dimension to the mystery. They found evidence of thermal shock.
Thermal shock. The objective of this lesson is to illustrate thermal shock,
A sophisticated stone-breaking technique that involves heating rock to extreme temperatures and then rapidly cooling it with water. When done correctly, this creates clean fractures along predictable lines. When done incorrectly, the stone explodes into useless fragments. Mastering thermal shock requires intimate knowledge of the material properties of stone, understanding of heat transfer, and precise control over temperature gradients. It is not something you stumble upon by accident. The evidence was found in the quarries at the base of the hill. Chemical analysis revealed that portions of the bedrock had been heated to temperatures between 750 and 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Adjacent to these scorched areas, the team found channels that appeared designed to direct water flow. The pattern suggested a deliberate process: heat the stone along a specific line, then quench it rapidly to induce controlled fracturing. This is exactly how the builders could have separated massive pillars from the bedrock without the brute force hammering that conventional archaeology assumed. But the thermal evidence did not stop at the quarries. The finished pillars themselves showed signs of heat treatment. Some of the intricate animal carvings had surfaces that were unnaturally smooth, almost glassy in texture. The AI analysis suggested these areas had been exposed to high heat after the carving was complete, as if the sculptors had a way to melt the surface of the limestone to give it a polished finish. Modern stonemasons achieve similar effects using high-pressure water jets or diamond-tipped polishing tools. The idea that Ice Age hunter-gatherers were doing something comparable using fire is forcing researchers to reconsider everything they thought they knew about prehistoric technology. What makes this even more unsettling is the absence of a learning curve. When a new technology is invented, you typically find evidence of experimentation and failure. You find stones that cracked the wrong way, pillars that shattered during transport, carvings that were abandoned because of mistakes. At Göbekli Tepe, the earliest pillars are also the most technically accomplished. The oldest enclosures feature the largest stones and the most sophisticated carvings. It is as if the builders arrived on day one already possessing complete mastery of their craft, as if they were not inventing these techniques, but rather continuing a tradition that was already ancient. The geometric code. The more data the researchers collected, the more patterns emerged. The T-shaped pillars were not positioned randomly within their enclosures. They followed a geometric logic that suggests sophisticated planning and astronomical awareness. Many of the pillars are oriented towards specific points on the horizon where the sun rises or sets on solstices and equinoxes. Some researchers have proposed that the entire complex functioned as a massive calendar, tracking the movements of celestial bodies with stone markers that would remain accurate for millennia. The T-shape of the pillars has its own significance. Many scholars now believe the pillars represent stylized human figures. The crossbar at the top is the head, and the vertical shaft is the body. Some pillars have arms carved in low relief, bent at the elbows with hands meeting at the waist. Others have belts, loincloths, and what appear to be symbols of rank or identity. If this interpretation is correct, then the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not just constructing a temple. They were creating a gathering place for giant stone ancestors, silent guardians watching over ceremonies that we can only imagine. The animal carvings follow their own symbolic logic. Certain creatures appear repeatedly. Vultures, scorpions, foxes, and lions dominate the iconography. Some researchers have noted that these animals correspond to constellations that would have been visible in the night sky 11,600 years ago. One pillar in particular has attracted intense attention. It depicts a vulture with a disc above its wing, surrounded by other animals and geometric shapes. Some scholars believe this carving records a specific astronomical event, possibly a comet impact or a meteor shower that had devastating consequences for the people of that era. This brings us to one of the most controversial theories surrounding Göbekli Tepe, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth's climate underwent a sudden and catastrophic shift. Temperatures plummeted, glaciers that had been retreating suddenly advanced again, and many species of large mammals went extinct. The cause of this climate disaster has been debated for decades.
There had been a gigantic global cataclysm about 12,500 years ago, but I didn't really know what had caused it. I suggested a number of possibilities.
But a growing body of evidence suggests it was triggered by a comet or asteroid fragment striking the northern ice sheets. The impact would have caused massive floods, continent-spanning wildfires, and a prolonged cooling period that lasted over 1,000 years. Göbekli Tepe was built at the end of this catastrophic period, just as the climate was finally stabilizing. Some researchers now believe the site was constructed as a response to the disaster, a monument to survival, a place where scattered communities could gather to preserve knowledge and rebuild their shattered world. The sophistication of the construction suggests that whoever built it possessed knowledge accumulated over many generations, knowledge that may have originated in a pre-catastrophe civilization that was largely wiped out by the Younger Dryas event.
Mainstream scientists saying that it looks like there was a series, not just one impact, but multiple impacts all over the Earth around 12,800 years ago that caused this cataclysm.
Göbekli Tepe, in this view, is not the beginning of civilization. It is a fragment of something older, a survivor carrying forward the memory of a golden age that ended in fire and ice. The burial The construction of Göbekli Tepe is mysterious, its end is even more so. Around 8000 BCE, roughly 1,500 years after the site was first built, the people who used it did something extraordinary. They did not simply abandon it. They did not let it fall into ruin. Instead, they deliberately and systematically buried the entire complex under millions of cubic feet of earth and rubble. They created an artificial hill so large that it completely concealed the stone structures beneath. This burial is what preserved the site so perfectly for 10,000 years. It is also what makes Göbekli Tepe unique among ancient monuments.
This is Göbekli Tepe. There are these incredible T-shaped pillars which would have been holding up a huge roof.
The fill material used to bury the temple was not local soil. Analysis shows it was transported from locations miles away, a massive logistical undertaking that would have required as much coordinated labor as building the site in the first place. The fill contains a deliberate mixture of limestone chips, flint tools, and animal bones. Some researchers have described it as an intentional offering, as if the burial itself was a sacred act. Scattered through the fill, archaeologists have found human skulls that had been modified, carved with deep grooves and stripped of their flesh.
Talking about Göbekli Tepe. And at that time, he had shared that the site was only approximately 5% excavated.
They have found statues that were deliberately smashed and placed face down in the earth. The site was not just buried, it was ritually terminated, sealed away with ceremony and intention. Why would a civilization spend centuries building the most sophisticated structure on Earth?
It's very difficult to know what the purpose of something like Göbekli Tepe could be. And certainly Klaus Schmidt had not reached any conclusions.
Only to bury it under a mountain of dirt? The 2025 research offers a clue that is as disturbing as it is suggestive. The AI analysis of the burial layers found that the fill was deposited rapidly, not gradually over decades as one might expect. The stratigraphy indicates that the burial was completed in a relatively short period, perhaps a few years, perhaps even less. This was not a slow abandonment. This was urgent, almost desperate, as if the people doing it were racing against time. Researchers have proposed that the burial was a protective measure, an attempt to preserve the sacred site from some impending threat. If another catastrophe was approaching, if the survivors of the Younger Dryas knew that darkness was returning, they may have chosen to hide their most precious creation rather than let it be destroyed. They may have believed that by burying the temple, they were keeping it safe for future generations, a time capsule containing the knowledge and beliefs of a vanishing world. What happened after the burial is equally haunting. The archaeological record shows that the sophisticated society that built Göbekli Tepe did not continue to flourish. Within a few generations of the site's closure, the people living in the region had reverted to a simpler way of life. The massive stone construction stopped. The precise geometry disappeared. The advanced thermal techniques were forgotten. It is as if the knowledge that created Göbekli Tepe was concentrated in a small group of specialists, and when that group died or dispersed, their secrets died with them. Humanity would not build on this scale again for another 7,000 years. The implications. The discoveries at Göbekli Tepe present a fundamental challenge to the standard model of human history. We have been taught that civilization developed in a linear progression. First came simple tool use, then fire, then language, then agriculture, then permanent settlements, then cities, then writing, then monuments. Each stage led inevitably to the next, with humanity steadily climbing a ladder of progress from primitive beginnings to modern sophistication. Göbekli Tepe does not fit this model. It is too sophisticated, too early, too sudden. It appears in the archaeological record like a thunderclap, fully formed, with no apparent precursors and no clear successors for thousands of years afterward. The site forces us to consider alternative possibilities that mainstream archaeology has long resisted. Perhaps civilization did not develop once but multiple times, with earlier iterations being wiped out by catastrophes and forgotten by history. Perhaps the capabilities of our ancestors were far greater than we have given them credit for, and our archaeological blind spots have prevented us from recognizing the evidence. Perhaps there are other sites like Göbekli Tepe waiting to be discovered, buried beneath deserts and jungles, submerged under rising seas, hidden in plain sight because we were not looking for them. The implications ripple outward, touching everything from how we understand human potential to how we interpret ancient myths and legends that speak of lost golden ages and civilizations destroyed by flood and fire. The 2025 laser scanning data adds weight to all of these possibilities. The machine-like precision of the tool marks, the evidence of advanced thermal engineering, the sophisticated geometry, none of this can be easily explained by the conventional narrative of primitive hunter-gatherers working with stone hammers. Something more was happening at Göbekli Tepe, and we do not yet have the framework to understand it. The academic establishment has been slow to grapple with these findings because they threaten decades of established scholarship. Careers have been built on the assumption that complex society emerged gradually in Mesopotamia around 6,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe predates that timeline by more than 5 millennia, and it does so with technology that appears more advanced, not less. There is also a deeper philosophical implication that few researchers are willing to discuss openly. If a sophisticated civilization could rise, flourish, and then be almost completely erased from memory, what does that say about our own future? We like to believe that progress is permanent, that the knowledge we accumulate will be preserved forever in books and databases and digital archives. But Göbekli Tepe reminds us that civilizations fall. Knowledge is lost. Skills that took generations to develop can vanish in a single catastrophic event. The people who built this temple possessed an understanding that their descendants could not replicate for 7,000 years. They were masters of stone, fire, geometry, and astronomy, and yet their world ended. Their children forgot. The wheel of history turned, and humanity had to start over from almost nothing. This is perhaps the most unsettling lesson of Göbekli Tepe. It is not just a puzzle about the past. It is a warning about the fragility of everything we have built. Our ancestors looked up at the same stars, solved complex problems, created beauty that still takes our breath away. And then they were gone, leaving only stone monuments buried under the earth as testimony that they ever existed at all. The site is not just a mirror that reflects our assumptions back at us, challenging us to question what we think we know. It is a monument to impermanence, a reminder that the achievements we take for granted could be forgotten by future generations who will look at our ruins and wonder how we did what we did, just as we now wonder about the builders of Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is far from fully revealed. Beneath the surface, enclosures lie waiting, buried for 11,600 years, holding secrets that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about human history. Every scan, every shovel, every artifact raises more questions than answers. Who built this place? How did they achieve what should have been impossible? And why did they deliberately hide it from the future? The story is still unfolding, and each new discovery threatens to challenge our understanding of civilization itself. When the next chamber is uncovered, will it illuminate the brilliance of our ancestors or force us to question everything we believe about the past?